So night one of the 2023 NFL Draft is in our rearview mirror now, and we've had a little bit of time to process and get ourselves relaxed and ready, refreshed for night two of the draft, and then day three on Saturday. Oh boy. But with day one being in the books, I decided it's time to give you my biggest winners and losers from day one of the 2023 NFL Draft. And you will note that as I do this, certainly there will always be a chance you come back to this 3, 4, 5 years from now and say, well, this guy was right here. Man, he looked like a genius here, but he looked like Nostradamus with this one. Very possible, right? Hard to know. But what I'm doing here is I'm not just taking a look solely at the player that a team took or didn't take. I'm looking at the player, the fit, the value, the process when I'm thinking about winners and losers. Some of mine might align to some of yours. Some of mine might be a little different from yours. But here we go. My biggest winners and losers for day one of the 2023 NFL Draft. I'm going to start with a homer pick, but it certainly makes sense to me, and that is the Chicago Bears. To all those Bears fans that are talking about, crying about the fact that Ryan Poles could have drafted Jalen Carter at 9 and passed him up, I say, to you. Darnell Wright wasn't in the same class of a prospect as Jalen Carter. That's right, Darnell Wright is better as a prospect. And when they went up head-to-head sometimes in the SEC, Darnell Wright handled his business against Jalen Carter, just like he did Will Anderson. But you look at the totality of the bigger picture so far with the draft. The Bears originally started off with the number one overall pick. And you have to account for that when you talk about day one winners and losers. The Bears took the number one overall pick, turned it into Darnell Wright, DJ Moore, pick 61 this year, a first-round pick in 2024, a second-round pick in 2025, and by getting the Eagles to trade up from 10 to 9 to take Jalen Carter, the Bears are able to go down to 10, take Darnell Wright, and pick up a fourth-round pick in next year's draft when it's probably going to pay for them to have those extra picks. That's beautiful. That's how you do it. It's great process, it's great strategy, it's great execution when you look at who they ultimately took at pick 10. So damn right the Bears are a winner on night one. The Arizona Cardinals, I look at them. They started at pick 3, and when you look at them, it's all depending about what's going to happen with the top 2 picks. You assume Bryce Young's going 1, but what's going to happen with 2? Well, quarterback go there. Is it going to be C.J. Stroud, Levis, Richardson, whatever the case might be? And then will somebody really want to trade up with the Cardinals at 3 to go get another quarterback? Well, what's interesting is the Texans, undercut the competition in some ways because they took C.J. Stroud at 2, so the Titans weren't going to trade up for C.J. Stroud at that point because he was already off the board. But the Cardinals were able to take that 3rd overall pick. They walk away with the left tackle that they clearly coveted in Paris Johnson Jr. Good work there. Got pick 33 in this year's draft, pick 81 in this year's draft, and also picks 20 in 2024, a first and a third-round pick. They had to give up a couple of things in return, but nothing in 2024. They gave up pick 34, 105, 168, but nothing in 2024. And pick up Houston's first and third-round picks next year to move down 9 slots. That was damn good work by Austin Fort and that Cardinals front office. Really damn good work. That's how you play the draft game. The New England Patriots, this was a good example of playing the draft game right. If the Patriots had just sat there at pick 14 and taken Christian Gonzalez, the corner from Oregon, the overwhelming response would have been, the Patriots made a really good selection. In fact, it's a bit of a steal because he was a top 5 or top 10 talent in this draft, depending upon your perspective. There's absolutely nothing wrong with just taking him at 14. Instead, the Patriots trade back 3 slots with the Steelers, who come up to get Broderick Jones. I really like that pick for them. But for the Patriots, they're able to pick up a 4th-round pick, in this case number 120, to get the guy that they could have just taken at 14, but that was a top 5 to 10 talent in this draft, according to most people, was a top 5 talent in this draft to me. That's outstanding work. And then they look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I like their process and what they did. I fully admit, I thought from a pure value standpoint, Anton Harrison at the end of round 1 was about a round too early from a pure value standpoint. It's a reach in terms of the value of the board. I absolutely believe that to be true. However, it was a need for them, especially with the potentially looming Cam Robinson suspension. So there's that. There's also the fact of, you realize when you look at Anton Harrison, he wasn't going to be there at the end of round 2 for the Jags. And any other offensive tackles that might be there at that spot aren't going to be what Anton Harrison projects to be. So if you were going to take one, it had to be here. Because the depth in terms of offensive tackles in this class is not as great, right? So understanding the situation that they're in, that looks good. And then you look at the process. They moved back twice. First from 24 to 25 and then 25 to 27. And in the process, pick up picks 130, 160, 240. So they got a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th round pick to move back 3 slots in the draft. And meanwhile are able to address a need, understanding that that type of talent at that position was not going to be available later on in the draft. So while the player that they took in a bubble, to me, was a bit of a reach, and he was, when you look at the entirety of the process and everything else, I think the Jags were a winner on night 1. And then I look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They were able to get Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, and for them, they're fantastic fits. If there was any situation you could point to and feel some confidence that Jalen Carter could realize his potential, it's Philadelphia. He goes to a championship culture, locker room full of leaders, lots of experienced guys on the defense, such as Fletcher Cox and Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham and so forth. If he was going to be successful anywhere, it's going to be there. And for a championship contending team to be able to add a guy with that type of athletic upside, even with all the risk, and only have to move up 1 slot and give up a 4th round pick next year when you're a contending team, you do that all day. And then Nolan Smith, who, you had some people for whatever reason talk about they might take him at 10. They were able to get him at 30. And he's another guy that's a really damn good fit that could be potentially a year 1 contributor for them. So they took advantage of those 2 first-round picks that they have and brought in 2 guys that could contribute, 2 guys that really fit what they want to do. That was really, really good work. But then you've got the losers, the Green Bay Packers. I both feel that Lukas Van Ness was a bit of a reach here, but also acknowledge, and did before the draft, that his upside's legit. I think there are people that were a little too down on him as a prospect based off of what he could actually be. And in some ways, I look at Iowa and Kirk Ferentz and I say, he could have been even more, but they didn't know what the fuck to do with him. And that is partially true. This, to me, is much more about continual overinvestment in the damn defense. And Packers fans can make all the goddamn excuses they want to make for this, but this is getting to the point of absolute lunacy. The Packers have had 12 first-round picks since 2012. 12 of them, including years where they had multiple first-round picks, 2022, 2019. And out of those 12 first-round picks, one of them has been on the offensive side of the ball, Jordan Love. One of them. Stay true to your board. Best value my ass. At some point in time, you got to invest in your fucking offense with premium picks, especially when you said goodbye to Aaron Rodgers, especially when you're trying to ensure that you've got something in Jordan Love. Like, that's just stupid. Lukas Van Ness could be a really good NFL defensive player, and this pick still in a bubble looks stupid. In terms of the bigger picture, it looks really stupid. Because it is a personification of a decade-long problem, of a continual overemphasis and overfocus, overinvestment on the wrong side of the ball in the modern damn NFL. I go to the Houston Texans next. And this has nothing to do with C.J. Stroud. Perfectly fine, logical, to me, fantastic choice for the Houston Texans. This all comes back to their big trade up with their second round pick from 12 to 3, which I had opined a couple days before the draft could be a possibility. It was like wondering out loud, hey, could this be a thing? And it ended up being a thing. And this isn't even so much against Will Anderson, who I thought was a touch overrated, but not too bad, right? I understand it. They feel he's a safe pick. They look at him as their Bosa type. I don't see him in quite that light. But the Houston Texans moved up 9 spots in a draft deep in edge rushers to take Will Anderson, and in the process give up pick 33, give up a 2024 first-round pick of their own, and a third-round pick. Why in the hell would you give up multiple premium picks in next year's draft for an edge rusher in a class loaded with edge rushers this year? Will Anderson, A-, B+ type of player in talent. This trade, F fucking minus all day. Then I look at the Tennessee Titans. They lose out because it's clear they wanted C.J. Stroud. The Texans, their division rivals, took him at 2. That's no bueno. And then if Anthony Richardson going to the Colts at 4, they didn't move up to the Cardinals at 3 to take him. Now 2 divisional rivals just added a young quarterback, and there sit the Tennessee fucking Titans. And if both of those guys pan out, the Titans are going to look really, really bad. Then they turn around and take a T-Rex of an offensive tackle at pick 11, who I'm sorry, I still think is better suited long-term at the NFL at guard. And even then, Skoronski was kind of overrated as a prospect. And then they pass down Will Levis. Now you could say, well, what happens if they take him or Hendon Hooker in round 2? Hey, they take Will Levis in round 2, could be a steal. They take Hendon Hooker in round 2, it's still a goddamn reach. But this did not go well for the Tennessee Titans. But the biggest loser of all on night 1 has to be Will Levis. There was certainly plenty of thought, even though there was certainly some thought about he could be the quarterback that drops and, could drop down to middle, late round 1. There was also thought of possibility that he could be pick 2 in this draft, pick 4 in this draft, pick 5 in this draft, and none of that shit happened. Now, we've seen a mixed bag over the years of these quarterbacks that are projected to go higher and then somebody drops. And sometimes that shit really pans out well. Think of Aaron Rodgers back in 2005. That's just one notable example of that. Then you think of like 2007 with Brady Quinn, and not so much. Lamar Jackson, 2018. Worked out pretty well for the Ravens. 2013, Geno Smith. Took a long time, but he dropped all the way from round 1 to round 2. And it took him a long time, but he got there to be a starting NFL quarterback. But it was a bad night for Will Levis, and he lost a bunch of money that even if he becomes a superstar in the NFL level, he will never, ever make that money up. So he was the biggest loser, frankly, of night number 1. So you let me know who you thought were the biggest losers from the first day of the 2023 NFL Draft, and let me know how much you love or hate my picks. All right, see you tomorrow to recap day 2.